Hey guys, this is Red and Blue, the channel on YouTube for all things PSG in English. Please subscribe. It's happened. It had to happen at some point. PSG lost the final of the Club World Cup against Chelsea. We got beat 3-0 in a game that, globally, Chelsea dominated and deserved their win. Really no way around that. They played exactly the games that they needed to play against us, and I think we'll talk about that. I also feel that the 3-0 score line is a bit generous for them, and it wasn't really that much of a domination. But yeah, let's get into all of those details. Well, we lost the final, so that always sucks. It's really like the last games that you want to lose. There's a saying that a final shouldn't be played; it should be won, and it's really what Chelsea did today. And for us, we didn't manage to get that fifth trophy of the season in the bag. Kind of a shame because we went very far in this competition. We expended a lot of our fitness. Beat some of the really toughest opponents, I think, in the world, only to falter at the last stage. So it's a bit, cruel and a bit difficult, and you see the frustration of the players at the end of the game. It is football. It is what it is. Hopefully, there's a lot we can take away from this game as well, and take into next season. So I think overall, what I would say is that I think, like I said, Chelsea really played the games that they needed to play against us. If you go back to the preview that we did with Matt, we said a few things which really came to life. First, I remember saying that for us, Chelsea is identified as one of the best team in English football and probably in the world as well when it comes to positional football. And when you see the way they've been able to essentially park the bus at the back with a line of 5-6 in defense, two central midfielders as well, and then a line of three in front, really annihilating that first line of attack for us. That was a very, very strong way of approaching the game, which really served them well. Pedro Neto slotted in at left back. Cucurella came inside a little bit. They had their two central defenders, and sometimes Reece James would even drop from central midfield all the way to central defense. And so, it ended up with being a line of 5, a line of 6, with one or two players just ahead of that defense in Moses Caicedo and Reece James. And so it makes it very difficult for us. Obviously, there's not a lot of space. Those guys worked very well together, exactly what Real Madrid, for example, didn't do. And so they closed off, basically any space. And managed to sit deep and sit tight for long windows of time. I think the game opens up with 10 minutes where they try to press us very high and actually manage that. But then after that, we get our foot on the ball. We dominate possession, which we've dominated for most of the game. I think the games end with about 2/3 possession for PSG. So we do dominate possession, but we have trouble creating a lot offensively. I think that's where. I don't want to make it sound like excuses, but I think that's where you see the level of tiredness of our player, which is something we were all worried about going into this game and this competition. Because there's not as much combinations, not as much switching of positions, not as much runs, and there's not as much technical precision. There's some passes which are missed. There's some controls which aren't as cutting. There's some opportunities which are simply squandered because of this, and so we can't find the opening in this block. I think, quite candidly, I feel like if we play the same game in March or in April, the outcome of the game is probably very different, and it's easy to play a game of what ifs at this point. But yeah, I think it definitely didn't help us. With a caveat as well that Chelsea went all the way in the Conference League, and so they played basically as many games as us this season. Obviously, they've got a larger squad and a deeper bench than we have, and I think it showed for this game. It comes with its own drawbacks. So on balance, it's just a different approach paying off for them right now, when ours showed the limit of what it can achieve. So tough one, and then to just complete the Chelsea part of this, they did very well in hitting us on the counter. I think their counter attacks were just spot on. They identified a flaw in PSG's lineup defense, which is behind Nuno Mendes on the left and kind of in the half space between Nuno Mendes and Beraldo. And they just hammered us on it. It's essentially where they put their best player in Cole Palmer. That's where Joao Pedro was drifting in from number 9. That's where Malo Gusto and Reece James were running into as well. And so on the counter, they were really, really piling on this. And for us, I think, quite bluntly, we did a horrible job of defending this, because we essentially got 3 times the same goal scored on us, or at least 3 times the same situation that goes to a goal. So obviously it's very disappointing there. I think, if we're playing against a team that's sitting tight in defense, we as a team have been very comfortable committing more and more players to go forward. And typically that's when our fullbacks go forward, Hakimi on one side, Nuno Mendes on the other. And Nuno Mendes on the left, he tried to go up front on the pitch a lot, but there was no compensation made by Fabian Ruiz, especially in that second part of the first half. Typically, in other games, it's been seen that when Nuno Mendes doesn't go forward as much as Hakimi does, for example, but when he does, a midfielder, typically Fabian Ruiz, drops in and covers the space at his back in case there's a counter. I think in this case, we were just struggling with their block so much that both players were forward at the same time. And yeah, as soon as Chelsea manages to get the ball back, there's a huge space in between, which only Beraldo is, in that general area. Vitinha also didn't really come in to cover as much as he should have, I think, in a couple of those situations. And so they just hammered us on it. And yeah, like I said, they scored basically 3 times the same goal, which is why I'm also saying, maybe the score is not a good reflection of how big of a difference there was between the two teams, because they didn't really create 25 different kind of opportunities. They created one kind of opportunity and they scored 3 goals at the back of it. And I think, it's kind of disappointing that our players, after the first goal and even more after the second one, didn't take a step back and close that gap. And yeah, they try to do it. You see, they do it in the second half. So I'm guessing at halftime, Luis Enrique must have blown his gasket at them. but in the second half of the first half, yeah, we get 3 goal scored and we just go back to doing exactly the same thing. So kudos to Chelsea on that for identifying and really taking advantage of that weakness. They also managed to break away very very rapidly. And I think the way they managed to escape our high press was really, really good from them. Sometimes long balls, sometimes really through balls through the middle. I was really impressed with that. I think the way they played on the pitch isn't really exactly what we expected in terms of positions. And I feel Fabian Ruiz, for example, who was playing very high, trying to break that block, on the turnaround, didn't manage to intercept a lot of passes, even if a lot of them were kind of in his area. So it makes me think that the players of Chelsea, in terms of where they were playing laterally, it wasn't exactly what we were expecting. And so we didn't manage to cut off as much as we should have. And so they get very fast through balls or long balls above our attack and above the first half of our midfield, and then we were left a lot of times at the back playing 4 against 4 or 5 against 5 at best, with the 3 defenders remaining in Beraldo, Marquinhos and Hakimi, plus Vitinha, who typically lies in deep, trying to cover for their front three plus whoever like wingers or fullback projects as well. And so it's tight, and they manage to make the most of it. They've got a genius player in Cole Palmer, who, you know, if you give him a one-on-one situation or one-on-nil situation, he's gonna create something and he's gonna score, and it's exactly what happens. At the same time, like, I feel a bit bad as well, because I think, like I said, I think they started the game very strong in the first 10 minutes, but I feel after we really like got the ball back and started putting our game into motion. And there's there's two opportunities for Doué at that point. The one where he tries to pass it back to Hakimi and it's intercepted by Cucurella instead of taking the shot himself. And then a few minutes later, he gets a shot off that's stopped by Sanchez. And I really can't help but feel that, you know, if we had scored either one of these, the game might have gone very, very differently. Because you can see as well that as soon as Chelsea scored, we were really having a hard time increasing the pace and increasing the quality of the football that we were playing. I think that's, you know, another marker of a team that's really tired is that if you get a goal scored on you and you don't have a lot in the tank, it's just going to chop off your legs at the knee. And it feels like it's exactly what happened. It's really like, even if there was a lot of time left, we mentally and physically didn't have what it would take to really get back into the game and take over. And I think the players really knew that from the get-go. So it was kind of sad at that point to see. On our side, I think it's a bit of a waste, because, like I said, I don't feel like we played such a bad game. I think like we dominated possession exactly like we wanted. Vitinha was doing his thing of calling in the shot from the back of the midfield and getting the ball to circulate, even between our central defender. On the right, we had some really good opportunities to move the ball forward between Hakimi, Doué, and Vitinha, and Marquinhos even. But yeah, like they were sitting in deep. They did it really well. Even when Dembele tries to go back into midfield to get the ball, one of the central defenders follows and one of their midfielders drops. So they were very tactically very sound and very well organized. And yeah, basically annihilated our chances to create stuff. I think, you know, if we had been maybe like 5% faster, 5% more precise in transmission and technically, and that little bit more cutting, I feel like we might have been able to do something. And there were like a couple of opportunities where it's not that far. But we just didn't have that extra 5% to really go at it. So yeah, ultimately, like, we take the loss, 3-0, rough one. It does give us a few teachings in terms of next season, because obviously, every team has been watching PSG and every team has been studying, and every team in the world is going to be seeing this game. So I expect we're going to be facing the same kind of situation a lot next year. In particular, like, not so much teams being great at counter-attacking, but teams like really sitting deep and parking a bus and trying to defend very efficiently against PSG. And so I think there's a few learnings in terms of really moving the ball faster, creating more differences, being like physically pressing a little bit harder and faster, so they don't have the opportunities to get out of their defense. There were a few things that were less than ideal, and in all fairness, like, less than what we had been doing in the past few months this season. So yeah, I think the other thing as well is that our team showed, and I think it's something that we are aware of and something that we've accepted, but a lack of physicality in midfield, which really was in our detriment a lot of time. I think when you see Reece James and Moises Caicedo, they cover a lot of ground, but they also like really can take the ball away man to man. When Joao Neves wasn't in the best shape of his life, Fabian Ruiz I thought had a horrible first half and came off pretty early in the second one. but we didn't really have, even wearing Zaire Emery, when he comes on as a substitute for Hakimi. So Mayulu comes into midfield. We don't really have an option to really add some physicality into our midfield. So that's definitely something that we're going to have to think about. And then, like, in terms of, changing the game and managing to create something, obviously we've got Barcola, who comes in for Kvara around the 60th minute. Does really quite good adding something to this game. But then after that, like when Doué has to come off because he's starting to have cramps, it's Ramos that comes in and doesn't really contribute as much. Tries, he's got an opportunity that he misses, which is crazy to me. But yeah, he's not as additive. And on the other side, you see Chelsea. They're subbing in Delap, they're subbing in Nkunku, they're subbing in Andre Santos. So they do have like that deeper bench with a lot of option for very high quality players to come in. So yeah, it is what it is. That's something we'll need to be conscious of. And then at the back, it's the same thing. Like, I think had Pacho been there, maybe the game would have played out differently. Maybe not. Maybe he could have covered more of that space behind Nuno Mendes, and maybe been more decisive in blocking Malo Gusto in the first goal, or following Cole Palmer that little bit closer and that little bit better on the second one. But yeah, it's hard to say. I think what's fair to say is that we've seen the flaws that we knew existed in both Marquinhos and Beraldo, which is a good technician, but they're not as strong man on man, and they're not as comfortable with space in their back. And so when the counter comes at them, instead of stepping off of defense and going into the player and trying to challenge him up front, they step back and step back and step back and step back until like you end up with Cole Palmer on the first two goals at the edge of the area, being able to take a shot virtually unopposed. And for a player of this quality, he doesn't miss. He missed one at the very beginning, but he wasn't going to miss 3 times. Like, that was for sure. So yeah, that's kind of where it leaves us. I'm not massively worried about it as well, because obviously, like, we've gotten into this competition, we've gotten far, and you get to the final, you want to win it, and we absolutely wanted to win it. And I'm like, annoyed and mad that we've lost this game, because I still do feel that if the playing field was completely level, we're probably like the better of the two teams. And there were things playing against us in this game in terms of our level of fitness. But it's trouble of our own making, so we can't really blame anyone but ourselves, and congratulate Chelsea on this one. So it is what it is, and Mercato is going to be starting, and there's going to be work to do, which is good. At least, out of all of the finals that we could lose, I was thinking that's probably the one I mind the less. I was thinking, would I rather lose the Coupe de France or lose the final of the Club World Cup? It's actually like pretty close, but the Coupe de France is, it's a PSG trademark competition. And losing domestically, it's so much more annoying because people just keep coming at you. I think losing against Chelsea on like a made-up competition in the middle of July in the US, like after beating Real Madrid 4-0, after beating Bayern 2-0, yeah, like, we've done our job. It's too bad, but it is what it is. So yeah. In terms of individual players and how they did, I'll start at the back and I'll try to go through all of them very quickly. Donnarumma, I think, he had 2 big saves in the second half. He basically did what he could. The 2 Cole Palmer goal are, perfectly placed shot from the edge of the area, right next to the post. I don't think he can do that much. On the third one, maybe he can come off of his line a little bit faster, or at least stand off his line a little bit more. But it's really a game of inches, and Joao Pedro plays it great as well, so it's hard to know if it would have made a difference or not. Otherwise, like, he didn't really have that much to do, I feel. With his feet, like, maybe a couple of long goals could have been more precise, but yeah, like, overall, it's hard to criticize that much. In the back, Nuno Mendes was a bit of a disaster class, if I'm honest. You can't you can't, as a defender, leave that much space at your back and not contribute much more in terms of offense. Because ultimately, he did spend most of the game in the opponent's half, but yeah, you don't really remember that much. There's a couple of times where he really runs through the ball, trying to cut inside the field, which I thought was really interesting. But typically, it ends up with him pushing the ball too far and Chelsea getting it back. So all of that for nothing. And then in defense, we know, like, you know, all of the hype of this season set aside, we know that he's not the strongest of defender. Usually he compensates with his speed and with just coming back and you know, giving a second and a third challenge on the player. But when the ball is so far at his back and his speed cannot compensate for this, well, then we're cut open and he cannot really do anything. And I think that's where like Chelsea was very smart as well, is that they really didn't wait for the defense to come back. They didn't try to secure possession and get the ball back and kind of sit with the ball for a little bit to catch their breath or anything. They just went straight for goal and really cut across. And yeah, he left us exposed. Beraldo, tough one, because yeah, I've got a lot of sympathy for Beraldo, and like, you know, go back if you haven't seen it to the video I did a few weeks ago around our substitutes, because I think it's typically one that's really undervalued. At the same time, like, Chelsea played very smartly on his weak points, and yeah, I mean, his weak points have been his weak points for a year and a half now, and a player of his age, he needs to improve. So yeah, like, ultimately, like, I think if two goals are for Nuno Mendes, one of the goals is for Beraldo, and so it really leaves us wanting, and it really shows, you know, the difference with Pacho, for example. So yeah, he still has a lot of ground to cover to get to top level in defense. Reality of it. Marquinhos, I felt, was very neutral, in the sense that he didn't make any major mistake, but he also, like, didn't contribute beyond his core area. So he didn't help Beraldo so much when the left flank was in trouble. His passing was good, but nothing really spectacular came out of it. So it's a pretty neutral game overall. And I think, given that he's our captain and he's playing with a substitute next to him, you've got to be expecting more for him. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. Hakimi spent a lot of his game up front. I think on the Chelsea side, João Neto, who was their left winger, essentially moved into being their left fullback, and so it really left all of the space in the world for Hakimi to make runs and move up on the right flank. I think there were a couple of interesting situations, but it wasn't definitely not Hakimi at his best. I don't know if it's tiredness and if it's just the end of a long season or something. But yeah, I think even mentally, it didn't really look 100% sharp and into the game. So I feel like he could have contributed a lot more. It didn't really, but yeah, like, it is what it is. Midfield, Vitinha, tough one. I think at the very beginning of the game, you felt he was very hindered by the high press of Chelsea, and specifically Enzo. I think Enzo Fernandez was really trying to run into him, and between Enzo, Cole Palmer, and Joao Pedro, there were a lot of players who were trying to chase him. Progressively, he got into the game and he gets his foot on the ball and he manages to control the tempo and dictate the passing and so on. But nothing really, like, spectacular happened out of it. The set pieces weren't a big success either. And I think in defense, yeah, he's playing as number 6, and sometimes it's just like he's not fulfilling the defensive part of that position. It's not his strengths, and you know, he was a midfielder that was used to playing higher up on the pitch before Luis Enrique brought him down. But I think, yeah, in terms of covering for that left side of defense, covering, Cole Palmer takes 2 shots at the entrance of the area, literally in the middle, and for me that's prime Vitinha territory, so he should be nowhere in the picture. So I think that's a big fail for him. And yeah, something where he'll have to show improvement over the long term of being a lot more diligent in his defensive contributions. Up front, Joao Neves gets a red card at the end out of frustration more than anything. He didn't. I mean, he's always running a lot and covering a lot of ground, but it didn't really have an impact, I feel. I think if you look at the other side and what Moises Caicedo does, who also runs a lot, but had much more impact in getting the balls back, in being able to get the ball out of defense, moving the block back up, and so on and so forth. Joao Neves, I think he was running a lot, but more like a chicken with his head cut off. So it didn't have as much impact. There's a couple of misses in his passes. Technically, he's not as strong. Yeah, difficult game. It was time for the season to end for him, and we knew that for the past, literally 2 months at this point. He's been running on fumes, and really, like, today it's showed a lot. So yeah, and Fabian Ruiz is not coming back to help in defense on the goals in the first half. Is a huge black mark on him. And I think offensively, couple of situations where he's running deep at their defense and trying to move forward to create trouble and create passing opportunities. But I think there was most of the time actually like the Chelsea line of attack. So the three, Enzo, Cole Palmer, and Joao Pedro, sat in between Vitinha and Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz, and that first line of defense, I think, was incredibly effective at getting us to funnel the ball to our sides, and then getting it off of us. So ultimately, Fabian Ruiz, there's something to be said that he didn't move into the right spaces to give the passing opportunities. Maybe he should have moved further back to draw players with him and maybe open different areas for Dembele or for Kvara. And he definitely has to cover better in defense, simply put. And then finally, in offense, Kvara, very neutral game as well. He didn't contribute that much in offense, and we've seen in the last few games as well that he was reaching the end of what he could do physically. And I think in this game, he doesn't really create any differences. But where, like, typically in the Real Madrid game, he would compensate that by covering a lot in defense. And, you remember, like, the Real Madrid game, for example, it doesn't really create much of anything, maybe once or twice in attack. But that clip of him getting the ball off of Mbappe and starting the counter gets 4 trillion views on YouTube within 24 hours because it's trademark Kvara, and at least it helps the team a lot. Obviously, in this case, Chelsea's block was happy to sit deep, and so there was less opportunities for him to drop into defense and help like that. But at the same time, Malo Gusto got forward a couple of times, and he was nowhere to be seen. So there was a bit of a fail there. On the other side, Doué, I thought for me was one of the most interesting players on the pitch, and definitely on our side. I think for most of the competition, there was a lot of criticism of Doué, even from myself. I think sometimes he's got that tendency of wanting to do everything himself or trying to make too complicated things happen. This time, I thought he was really interesting in moving a lot on the pitch, going in deep to try to get the ball, combining with Hakimi and with Joao Neves and with Vitinha to get the ball up, moving from the right into the center, dropping deep and like moving around. Also not hesitating to make runs at players and, really like challenging Cucurella or Joao Neto, Pedro Neto, man-to-man and trying to dribble past them. Not everything was perfect, and we shouldn't expect perfection for him because the way he plays the game, there's always going to be things that don't end up working. But I thought he was one of the players on our side that was creating the most differences and creating the most imbalances on the Chelsea side, and forcing them to change and adapt and move on the fly. We don't really see the benefit of it, but once again, like, what would this game have been? And even for him, if he doesn't pass to Makimi and just takes the shot or scores that second shot that he has straight after in the 20th minute. Hard to say. A game of what ifs. It's never really a really good analysis, but I feel like that would have changed the game on its head. It is what it is. And then Dembele up front. It's a hard one because you definitely see the quality of the player in terms of technically his abilities is extremely gifted, and it shows the lines of passing that he finds, what he creates. But at the same time, he was in the middle of a black hole of Chelsea player who had such density on him and in his area that I think it was very hard for him to make much of anything happen, because he had there 2 or 3 central defenders plus 2 defensive midfielders. And, there was always someone on his back, always someone following him. And so even when he drops deep to get the ball, there's a central defender that follows. If he's going in deep behind the defensive line of Chelsea, the goalkeeper is straight onto him. His pressing the goalkeeper was, impressive as always in terms of energy expended, not as effective. I think Chelsea did very well in just going for long balls and finding people in their attacking line to get the ball from their goalkeeper. So hard one for Dembele. It's hard to blame him, and it does. He's obviously a world-class player and a future Ballon d'Or winner. But he was well taken by Chelsea and well annihilated in his contribution to the game. So that's kind of what I had for you guys. I think that's essentially what I thought of the game. It's a really hard one. It's a hard-fought defeat. I wish we had won. It's not the biggest competition of the year. It's the end of a very long season, so it's annoying to end it on a defeat. Well done to Chelsea. I don't know if Matt, the Stamford Sink, is watching this, but kudos to them. And we've got work to do going into next year. And I think, next year is going to be super exciting because we're going to have to be able to win games like this. We're going to have to find solutions. We're going to have to strengthen the squad. There's going to be lots of things happening in that department over the next 2-3 weeks. Players are now on a holiday for 3 weeks before they come back to training. We'll go straight into the European Super Cup against Tottenham. So there's going to be lots of things going on. For now, I'll head in here. Let me know in the comment what you thought of the game and if there's anything I might have missed or anything you guys thought about differently. And for now, like the video, comment on it, subscribe to the channel, super important. We're growing and it's great to see, and we'll definitely keep going on this. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the coming days anyway. And don't forget, ici c'est Paris!